that somebody else has been slotted for. Okay, and I want to title this mainly The Revolt Against God. So let's take a look. So Korah is a Levite. All right, and they're going to be trying to pursue priesthood, not just the Levite order, which is in charge of the tabernacle. They're within the Levite order. God set up the priesthood, the holy priesthood from generation to generation, and who that was to be. In fact, we'll see where that actually began way back in the conversation between Moses and God. Oh, my Bible's not all on its own. Where it all began and how he already orchestrated that Aaron was to be the one that was the first priest. So these guys, specifically Korah, because the other two are Reubenites. They're not Levites. So for them to come alongside Korah, who is a Levite, and side with him, and this just isn't a few men.
Oh, okay.
All right, so let's read down here. These three guys, verse 2, and they rose up before Moses together. And some of the sons of Israel, with some of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation chosen in the assembly, and these were men of renown. So if we said 250 leaders, how many do you think those leaders are over?
Like several hundreds.
Yeah, or
maybe
thousands.
even thousands.
Yeah, because if you take a look at the whole, they list out how many hundreds of thousands. You're looking at over almost not quite a million Jews that came out of the Exodus. It's not just Jews too; it's sojourners and Jews. But they give a number in the hundreds of thousands of each of the tribe, and so it gets close to just a little over half a million. So if you've got 250 leaders of the congregation, and then all of those people, descendants, slaves, servants, well maybe not slaves, but servants, and so on, it's quite a uproar. All right. Yeah. And not only that, they are titled as men of renown. What does that mean? Men of renown. I mean, they just came out of Egypt. How do they get that title? Okay, so the way they get that title is you do well in life.
Oh, okay.
You got lots of sheep. Okay, you got lots of people. You got lots of sons and lots of daughter. Okay, that's back then. That's how you became. That's how Abraham became renowned, almost like a king in the land when he had Lot and they came out. It said that he brought everything that he brought out from his homeland, showed him to be a very renowned man. And when he went after Lot and all of those, they came. Melchizedek, remember Melchizedek and all this. Abraham was renowned because of his stature as a family man and all of the things that he had acquired. Later on, renown is carried over into like a soldier's renown. They had fought many battles. David's 300 renowned men. Okay, verse 3. They assembled together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone far enough. For all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourself above the assembly of the Lord?" What's in his heart? Why does he feel that it's necessary if the tabernacle has already been built, okay, and they're wandering in the wilderness and they are going into the presence of God, Aaron is, and he's not being struck dead at all, okay, and they are performing what is commanded of them by God to hold these different sacrifices and feasts. Why then does Korah feel it's necessary to involve himself also in the priesthood? What causes that in the heart or in the mind? Pride. Okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's go back. We're going to look at something because what's going to happen, and we'll wait before we do it. when we look at the motives of this, now this is political. It's also, this is a great example of jealousy when it comes to leadership.
Yes.
All right, so leadership is really the key thing here, is that, hey, is God not also coming down in our midst? Has He not also sanctified all of us coming through the parting of the Red Sea? Okay, so all of us, He's counting the whole congregation as holy. But what does God say? And this is great what Moses does, is he puts it back on God. And so let's go back to Exodus chapter 7 real quick, or chapter 4, excuse me, chapter 4 of Exodus. I want you,
chapter 4.
Well, I turned that on, and even nothing came up. That's right. Chapter 4, let's look at verse 1 of chapter 4, Exodus. It says, Then Moses answered, What if they will not believe me or listen to what I have to say? For they may say, The Lord has not appeared to you. This he's talking about his own people.
Yeah.
He's not talking about Pharaoh. And the Lord said to him, What is in your hand? And he said, A staff. I want you to remember that, because on the tail end of the story over here in Numbers, in the next couple chapters, God has to make another decision on how He feels. What is His decision in this? And He causes all of the leaders to go and make a rod, put their name on it, and give it back to, and they collected them up and brought them into the tabernacle. And God caused Aaron's rod to bud. Here, in this situation with Moses, is a staff. And now I start thinking about that psalm. It says, Thy rod and thy staff shall comfort me. And I started to think, what if that scripture is talking about the judgments of God will comfort me?
Yeah.
Aaron was comforted. Moses was comforted, not once, but twice, as he threw his staff on the ground, and it turned into a serpent. And then the other ones threw their staffs, they turned into serpents, and his serpent, God's serpent, caused the other ones to be devoured. So that was a judgment of God. When his staff touched the water, the seas parted. Yeah. When his staff touched the Nile, it turned to blood. Everything that staff was involved with was a judgment of God. And when we look at the Aaron's budded rod, again, a judgment of God. And when I think about how God's judgments comfort us, has God's judgment ever comforted you in your life?
Yeah.
Okay. How about His judgment over your rebellion?
Yeah.
It comforts you.
Yeah.
You know, blessed are you that is chastised by God, because he who He loves, He chastises. All right. So in this situation, now look down. We got some ants in here. Jump down to verse 5 of Exodus 4 again. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Jump over to verse 8, that same chapter. And it shall come about that if they will not believe you or heed the witness of the first sign, that they will believe the witness of the last sign. What was the last sign?
That's when the people lost their firstborn.
Yes, absolutely. Let's jump over to Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. And the reason I'm going back here is because I want you to see what God had spoken about Aaron and Moses from the beginning. Verse 1 says, And the Lord said to Moses, See, I will make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be a prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall speak to Pharaoh, and that he let the sons of Israel go out of the land. All right. So Moses is being told by God that he will be as God to both Pharaoh and to the people. All right, to his own people. That he is the one that God has chosen to be his voice, and not just Moses, but he has said Aaron. And it was actually Aaron's staff that Moses was doing all of the things with.
Well, now Moses the only one hearing this, or are other people hearing this?
At this time, back in chapter 4 of Exodus, that's just Moses.
Yeah.
In chapter 7, Aaron has already, I think, been.
Oh, okay. But the point is, the other people aren't hearing these things so that they would understand that Moses is the representative.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking is, this is what the other people needed to hear, but unfortunately.
Yeah. And so when he says, if they're not going to believe the first sign is really Moses coming back and explaining, hey, I met with God, and I know his name now. I've got a name for you. His name is I Am. And to say, hey, and he is desiring for us to worship him. And so, to me, that's really the first sign that, even though we know that it was the Nile River turning to blood, being the first sign, but the last sign, the firstborn child, should be the sign that they should not rebel against Moses.
Right, yeah.
Okay? Remember, Moses was concerned more than once about his leadership capabilities and that they would not listen to him. So this type of rebellion really started way back in Egypt. And they were very reluctant to come out of Egypt, number one. They were very reluctant to have Moses be their leader. Moses had fled Egypt because of how they had treated, the Hebrews had cheated him when they found out that he had murdered another Egyptian.
Yeah.
All right, so he's already on shaky ground with them. Let's go back to Numbers, chapter 16. So we get this accusation, basically a revolt. This is why I say it's a revolt against God. And Moses is going to make that clear. He's going to put it back onto God because they're coming after Moses and Aaron. And you know what's interesting is they've got all these things going on that are miracles, from manna to the quail to their clothing not wearing out. Not to mention the crossing of the Red Sea. All these things, and yet through it all, they still want to deal with what they are seeing and not with what they are not seeing. Okay? What they are not seeing is the power of God. What they are not seeing is the handiwork of God. So in verse 4, Moses heard this, he fell on his face, because he's humble. He knows their error. Okay? And he spoke with Korah and his company, saying, tomorrow morning the Lord shall show who is his, and who is holy, and will bring him near to himself. Even the one whom he will choose, he will bring near him. So what's Moses saying is, hey, guess what? You don't get to say, because what did he say? Aren't we all holy?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so God determined way back in Exodus who was holy. Two people, Moses and Aaron.
That's right.
Those are the two holy people that he's chosen. To bring near, to bring close. All right, to come. Aaron's job, one of the most dangerous jobs in all of Israel. The most dangerous job. To go stand in front of the Ark of the Covenant and put blood on the mercy seat. Okay, that was, you don't just half-hearted go into the tabernacle. Otherwise, why would they have a rope around your ankle?
Yeah.
Verse 6. Do this. Take censers for yourself, Korah, and all your company, and put fire in them, and lay incense upon them in the presence of the Lord tomorrow, and that the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the one who is holy. You have gone far enough, you sons of Levi. Gone far enough. Did that sound familiar? Go back to verse 3. Listen to what they said to Aaron and Moses. He said to them, you have gone far enough. So he's coming back out and saying, no, you have gone far enough. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. All right, and so they fill up these censers with incense. Let's jump over to Exodus 16 real quick. Boy, I hope I got that right. I might have got that wrong. Let me check and make sure it's not Leviticus 16. That's a good spot, though. Yeah. So it shouldn't be Exodus, it should be Leviticus. I superimposed that. I didn't even put a book in there at all. I just thought it was that. Let's jump over to chapter 16 of Leviticus. So this is the law of atonement that is talked about, and it specifically addresses Aaron. Okay, so this is the Lord speaking in the context of verse 1. We'll read verse 1 of chapter 16. It says, "Now the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of his two sons of Aaron, when they had approached the presence of the Lord and died. And the Lord said to Moses, Tell your brother Aaron that he shall not enter at any time into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat, which is the ark, lest he die. For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. Aaron shall enter the holy place with this." And he goes through this whole thing. All right, we'll talk about the two sons here in just a second. But I want you to think about this. Who instructed who to come in before him? God did.
Yes.
God didn't say Korah. God didn't say any other individual. He said Aaron. I want Aaron to be the one that comes in before me. So I want to get that established, that God chose Moses in the beginning. He chose Aaron to be a priest to come in before him. These were the things that were going to be explained by Moses, saying, it's obviously written down. This is the Torah.
Oh, okay.
This is stuff that, hey, this is what God said, And so if these people would have that have come out of Egypt, they would have been there during the time when the Lord spoke to Moses. And he wrote these things down. Verse 9, back in Numbers, chapter 16. It says, this is when Moses says, Is it not enough that God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the services of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to him? So what did Moses, as a good leader, do? He reassured them of their responsibilities, that they had a higher responsibility than the other tribes. They had a very important responsibility, the tabernacle.
Right, yeah.
And not only that, if you catch the very end of it, what else besides building, erecting, and keeping the maintenance up of the tabernacle, what does it say in that scripture they also did?
Seek the priesthood.
What's that?
Seek the priesthood. It said they also seek the priesthood.
I'm not sure if I know what you're saying.
I'll just say what it says in the Bible.
Seek the priesthood.
Yeah.
Seek the priesthood. Well, before it says that, though, he says in verse 9, the priesthood's in verse 10, correct. We're going to get to that. But in verse 9, there's two things. He says, He has brought you near to himself in the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them.
Okay.
These were ministering Levites.
Yeah.
All right, so this means that they were in charge of worship. They were in charge of the singing to reading of the passages.
Yeah.
They were, these were things that were done to, hey, you need to make sure that you're training these children to know God, and so on and so forth. That the Levitical law was being followed step by step. So they were separated out as a special group of people by God, already brought close to God.
Yeah.
You know, these people were allowed to go inside the tabernacle area, where if you were just a Reubenite, if you were from the tribe of Dan or Judah, you could come maybe to the gate. You had to have permission. You came in, and that's as far as you came. They would take your offering from you or provide one for you, and you would lay your hands on it if it was one of those type of things. They would take over from there. They would pray for you or whatever, but you didn't get to come to where the tabernacle, the tent of the meeting was at. That was only Levites. And so Moses is saying, hey, listen, you guys are special to God. You have already been separated. You're already doing things. And then, like she said in verse 10, and that he said, and that he, God, has brought you near Korah, and all your brothers, sons of Levi, with you. Has he not done all of this stuff for you? And now you are also seeking the priesthood also. What does that tell you about leadership? That there is power-hungry people.
Yes. That's
Power-hungry. Even if you have power, you want more power. Even if you are separated out to do good, good works or whatever. You've got a talent, or you want to now take everybody's talent, take everybody's responsibility. Oh, I want to be Aaron. I want to go in. Man, that's the last thing I want to do is go near the Ark of the Covenant. Man, I see Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's not a good deal. I see a hand somewhere. Yes, Lauren.
I remember that saying, it says power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yes, it does. And this thing, when you go back and you look at Nabal and Abihu, okay, so in this situation here, Moses tells them to basically go get a frying pan, a fire pan, and begin to create the incense.
Yeah.
All right, and you're going to light these incense. Well, this happened with the same two sons of Aaron, and they brought incorrect incense.
Right.
And God says, don't do that. And fire came out and devoured them.
Yeah.
All right, so we have to understand what the purpose of incense is. It's a form of atonement for the individual, is to say, check me. Okay, so this is trying to get God's attention to look at the individual. Okay, you don't want to light incense to God if you have corruption in your heart. If you are warring against God, the last thing you want to do is get his attention on you with an incense. All right, but that's what these individuals did, is they began to do that. Okay, this next verse I want us to take a look at in relationship to Exodus verse 5 in chapter 4, which we read already. All right, verse 11 says, therefore you and your company are gathered together against the Lord. But as for Aaron, who is he that you should grumble against him? Okay, it says, for you and all your company have gathered together against the Lord. Remember what it said in verse 5 of Exodus 4? That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, and of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. When did God appear to them? As Moses.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay? As Moses. Remember, he said, you will be as God. He has never said that to anyone. Okay? He says, you will be as me, God. You're going to go in my name. I am. And Moses is like, hey, I'm innocent here. I just went over to check out the cool fire. And he told me to take off my sandals. And the next thing I know, I'm here leading you people. And he took it very serious to the degree where he put it back on God, because he did what? He says, all right, I'm going to have God choose. Everybody's going to get their incense out, and they're going to go before God. We're going to find out what he chooses. Verse 12. Then Moses sent and summons Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eli. But they said, we will not come up. Remember the story about Esther this last Sunday?
Yeah.
And the king's wife? No, I'm not coming up. That is the spirit of rebellion. No.
Yeah.
I don't care about your leadership. I don't care who you think you are, even if God put his seal of approval on you, I'm not coming. It just makes me think of a toddler.
Yeah.
No. In fact, one of my grandkids trying to come into the daycare here today, and just, Kimberly says, no, he doesn't want to. He's just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to go. And he's leading to get, kids, they never grow up. You get to an adult and you put them into a situation like this, and they're going to dig their heels in because all they can see is somebody else is getting better toys.
Yeah.
Aaron's getting to go in, and everybody thinks Aaron is so holy because he's going into the presence of God. I imagine Aaron's appearance, and we already know that Moses' appearance changed when he went on Mount Sinai.
Right.
But I can imagine that Aaron's also appearance had to have changed somewhat because he was in the presence of God at the Ark of the Covenant. When the Shekinah glory would come down, he's in there pouring the blood of a lamb on it. All right? And the presence of God is descending inside the Holy of Holies. Aaron is the only one. So he's coming out of the tabernacle, and he's having these amazing experiences with God. This is why Joshua, son of Nun, later on, he would remain in Moses' tent on his face before God, because it was a life-changing experience offered to anyone. Right there in your own tent, you could do this. Have this experience. That they were seeking the priesthood to be selected as, hey, we're the Levites. We're in charge of the whole tabernacle. Why shouldn't we be in charge of the priesthood as well? And that was not what God said. And he says, they say, we will not come up. In verse 13, it is not enough that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with, you have not brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness, but you would also lord it over us.
That's one thing I've always wondered about. With all the blood that they put on the ark, I just wonder if it was self-cleaning.
You know what's interesting about blood is it turns black after a period of time, and when there's extreme heat and smoke around it, it flakes off.
Oh, okay.
So it actually will your blood will turn to like an ash, and it will actually fall off. And if you think about the tent of the meeting, so the altar of incense, one of the chief reasons for the altar of incense was to create tears on the priest's eyes so that they couldn't see.
Okay.
Okay, so the covering of the tent is flat, and it's got like 7 or 10 layers, I can't remember. But it's got all these layers, very heavy, and it goes all the way to the ground, and it's pegged. So and then it's got 2 curtains, one at the front and one 2/3 of the way in. And that just before that second curtain is the altar of incense. So if you like that altar of incense, it's now captured in between 2 heavy curtains and a ceiling. What do you think is going to happen to that smoke? It's going to be everywhere in there.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you've got to know where everything is, because you can't see. If you've ever been around a campfire and the smoke's blowing in your face, take that times 100.
Yeah.
That's what the altar of the incense was. It was a commandment of God. It was to show you that when you are in the presence of God, there is judgment in there.
Yeah.
Okay, that you need to be protected, and your prayers protect you. Your obedience protects you, and here in this case, your tears were protecting the priests because they weren't to be able to look at God. In this verse 13, we've already said a lot about the rebellion and so on. But what's in the individual's heart is exposed. What is their argument in this? Verse 13. Number one, where they wanting to go? They want to go back to Egypt.
Oh, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, so he says, is it enough Is it not enough that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey?
It's like going back in the fire.
Have you forgot about Pharaoh? Well, he's dead now. He got swallowed up by the waters. Yeah, we should go back now. We defeated our enemies. That could be what they're thinking. But ultimately, this is about a spiritual life. If we take the individual that is in bondage and darkness in the world, okay, that represents Egypt. All right? And Jesus Christ represents Moses bringing us out with power and strength, okay, and through the blood of the Lamb, which was the Passover. And so when you think about that, and then the crossing of the Red Sea, and then an individual now, what does this say? When you have rebellion in your eyes, you have a tendency to look at life differently than everyone else.
Yes.
Proverbs 10:12 says, hatred fuels decisions, but love calms all rebellions. Proverbs 10:32 says, the upright speak what is helpful, but the wicked speak rebellion. And then this one also, 17:11 in Proverbs says, an evil man seeks only rebellion. Therefore, listen to this, a stern and pitiless manager will be sent against him. My mom and I were involved in prison ministries for quite a few years, and I remember we were going to visit an inmate at Folsom Prison, and when you come down there, everything there is made out of stone. I mean, it's really classy, prison look. And there's this office or the shop that you can go in there, and the inmates have all these things that they've made while being incarcerated at Folsom Prison. And my mom looks up, and here's this really cool wooden paddle, and it's got a picture, hand-drawn in color, of this toddler in a PJs, and it's like the old button-up one, the breech fronts.
Yeah.
And the breech is down like this, and you can see just a little bit of a tuchus sticking out, and you can see a little rosy, and you just see this tear on it. So my mom bought that. That was what I got paddled with. And I can't remember what it says. It says to keep something about to keep your kids out of prison. Use this. It was really cool. So I have this paddle, and it sits in our kitchen on a nail. And you tell the grandkids, they say, Psycho, this is what Grandma used to spank me, and this is what I used to spank your mom. And I will spank you with it. Just kind of threaten them. But
But would you?
Oh yeah, I spanked my grandkids. I use my hand for my grandkids. I use the paddle for when they get older, like 19, 20.
Yeah. So there are a few people that...
And they use their fists.
They can use their fist? Well, don't tell them that. They don't know that.
Kids are a little smarter than me, but I told that to my grandson that, when I was your age, they used to use the paddle. I said, well, today they call that child abuse.
Yeah, boy. I mean, there was... you guys remember wooden spoons, right?
Yeah.
Buns of steel over here. I broke plenty of those on mine, for sure. My mom was so mad. That's why she bought the paddle. She was tired of all of her soup spoons getting broke. I got spanked a lot. I'm not saying. I'm not holding back here. This is my chief rebellion. My chief rebellion is not coming home on time. I would spend too much time in the woods, in the creek, and it would get dark, and that's when all the fun really began, is at dark, and my dad be whistling, my mom be yelling for me, and you're way out in the woods, and you come home, and you knew it was going to happen, you're going to get a spanking. Well, I like the woods, so it was a...
So you got a wooden spoon.
No, that wooden spoon was saved for during the time when Dad was at work.
Oh.
Okay. By this time, Dad's home, and you get the belt.
Yeah.
Or a razor strap.
That's the
This
sharp.
is the one he wore because you could hear it come out of the belt loops. And it had this epoxy resin with 3 rattlesnake rattles in it that his brother Joe had made for him in Arizona. And it was intimidating.
Yeah.
Evidently not.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking there. Well, it wasn't. It did its job. It was just different. All right, let's move on. All right, so they take these sensors and they get them all out there, and we come down. They put fire in them in verse 7. And in verse 8, Moses says to Korah, says, "Hear now, you sons of Levi." That almost sounds like
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure. It's probably just the way it's written. I don't know.
Are you in 18 or you said?
8.
16, Jeff, 16, 81.
16:8.
Oh,
In Numbers 16:8.
oh, no, yeah, okay.
And he says, "It is not enough that the God of Israel separated." Oh, wait a second. You're right. My app sometimes will, if you have the same app as me, it will start reading for you, and it'll start moving all on its own, very slightly. And if you don't pay attention, you don't even notice that it's moving. And I look over, and I'm like 20 verses down. Right. Sorry. I'm sorry. We are in verse 15.
Yeah.
Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not regard their offering." Okay, so this incense, like I said, is an offering.
Right.
I have not taken a single donkey from them, nor have I done harm to any of them. And he says to Korah, "You and all your company be present before the Lord tomorrow, both you and they along with Aaron." And they take the frying pan and each one their own censer in verse 18, and they stood in their doorways in the tent of the meeting. And Korah assembled all the congregation against them. You know, how do you picture that? It's almost like it almost reminds me of the Philistines and the Israelites in that valley where Goliath came. And this is that same rebellion. And we have to realize that God is not pleased with this. In fact, before we go too far, I want you to start thinking about this scripture we're going to go to here in just a little bit. Write this down. Hebrews chapter 3, 16 through 19. We're going to go look at this here in just a sec. And this is talking about this specific situation. All right? So this is this congregation that is assembled against God. All right? And it says, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. So everybody saw it. Then the Lord spoke to Moses there, saying, "Separate yourself from among the congregation, that I may consume them instantly."
Yeah.
And so this is what God thinks about this type of rebellion. He's like, I chose Moses, I chose Aaron, and I set it up. What are you pursuing after? Is it not good enough to be a part of the lineage of Abraham? Is that not good enough? Is it not good enough for us as believers to know Jesus Christ? Do we need to pursue everything? It's good enough that I'm counted worthy to come into the kingdom of God. That's enough for me. If there's more that He asks of me, we do it. We don't go out and search it out and say, "That's my job, I'm taking it. I'm the new piano player." But if you are good at playing the drums, you're not going to step on anybody's toes. So we do need a drummer. So they fell on their face. "O God, God of spirits of all flesh, when one man sins, will you be angry with the entire congregation?" The Lord spoke to him and says, "All right, speak to the congregation. Get back from around the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abram." And Moses went, and he says so they wouldn't come to him. So he says, "I'll go to you." Okay? And he went to the elders of Dathan and Abram, and Israel followed with him, and he spoke to the congregation. He says, "Depart now from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing that belongs to them, or you will be swept away in all their sin." What was it you said about rebellion when I said, when you think about rebellion, what comes to mind?
Witchcraft.
Witchcraft. All right. So God is saying that in this type of rebellion, if you touch it, you are touching witchcraft at this level.
Okay.
A wickedness that is set against God. Anything that they have, their tents, everything, that is considered the property of witchcraft individual. People that are practicing evil. This is why Peter is rebuked so sternly by Christ when Peter says, no, let it not be so. Don't go to Jerusalem to be crucified. And Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. Because what Peter just spoke was rebellion against God. Remember, who sent Jesus to be crucified?
God.
The Father.
Yeah.
And so for Peter to say, no, don't go to be crucified in Jerusalem, Jesus responds, get thee behind me, witchcraft, Satan, Lucifer. This type of ideology or this type of theology where you can reject what God has already established, the truth, okay? That's where things are very dangerous. And I meant to bring this picture. I've been talking about there's so many ministers now online that are in, there's, the latest one I just saw, maybe you saw it, it's this minister's pulpit. Draped in front of it is the LGBTQ flag.
Oh.
Okay,
Where
so,
they, yeah.
so was that Farley?
How come they would do that?
Well, this is the thing, is, you know, when you're reading these things and you go back to Proverbs and you start looking at the word rebellion or rebellious, and you see that their hatred of the truth fuels their decision process. Okay, so when the truth is too convicting, when the truth is too righteous, too holy, then we must remove the holiness and bring something else in that is love. Okay, you've got to love this. But Jesus says, no, I hate this sin.
Yeah.
Okay, I hate these sins. I hate these things. Okay, and this is the same thing with this situation in Numbers, is God is saying, I hate this wickedness.
Right.
You wicked people. All right, so some of the story we do know. We get down, if it didn't move on, we get down to verse 28. Verse 28 of Numbers 16. Moses said, by this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these deeds, for this is not my doing. If these men die, the death of all men, or if they suffer the fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about an entirely new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that is theirs, and they descend alive into Sheol, then you will understand that these men have spurned the Lord. And God, sure enough, heard Moses, and the ground opened up, and it swallowed him, and it was miraculous. But back in verse 30 says, and then you will understand. Korah, at the very beginning of verse 1 of this, lacked understanding.
Right.
Let's go to Hebrews. Well, we've got a little bit of time. Hebrews chapter 3.
So did Korah get swallowed up?
Yeah.
Was it Korah that got swallowed up?
Yeah, but not all of Korah's relatives did. Some of the sons did. Chapter 3, and let's look at starting in verse 16. This is talking about Numbers 16 right here. It says, for who provoked him when they had heard? Indeed, did it not all those who came out of Egypt led by Moses? And with whom was he angry 40 years? Was it not those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but those who were disobedient? And so we see that they were not able to enter in. What is it? Because of unbelief. Go back to number 16. It says, when the grounds open up, you will understand. Why? Because it was miraculous.
Yes.
Miraculous. Okay? This is the problem that we have today, is we have a lot of faithless generations, because they are looking for miraculous signs. Okay? But the miraculous sign is in your heart.
That's right.
The ultimate miracle is the forgiveness of sins, the ability to now come into the sheepfold of Jesus Christ. That is a miracle. The miracle is you to understand this Bible. That is the miracle.
Yeah.
And if you believe in this, you have all of the things like the ground opening up, the parting of the Red Sea. You have all these things that if you believe that they happened back then, you don't need to see them today.
Right.
Okay? So if we are leading people, all right, we have to realize we are not the, if you're a leader, nobody's attacking me. You can't attack me because I didn't call myself into this ministry. All right? So if I have to defend myself, I'm doing something wrong. I don't need to defend myself. I'll say, hey, you don't want me here? You remove me. And that goes for presidents, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, doesn't matter what president is in there, you do not have the right to say he should be removed. God put him there. It says so in your Bible that God puts the kings in their seats. And he turns the heart of the king. See, for us, we have to get outside of politics. And Korah tried to bring politics into it. And what did he do? He formulated his own party.
Yeah.
Not the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party. It's called the Rebellious Party.
Yeah.
Okay? And they were petitioning against Moses, not realizing that they were petitioning against God, their own political party, for their own gain, to gain the priesthood. So I think in closing for me, when we look at rebellion, we have to realize that rebellion, even the smallest part of rebellion, can grow to do great evil. Edmund Burke says, by gnawing through a dike, even a rat may drown a nation. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So, the rebellion that is in a Christian, God deals with that. Okay? And as your rebellion, if you have rebellion, He will expose it to the degree where ultimately, when we offer ourselves to God, or if we try to, He's going to somehow open the ground up of our heart and try to swallow up all of the rebelliousness in your heart and replace it with what? Humility.
Yeah.
Moses' humility. Okay? Obviously, Moses did get enough of it later on, and he had his own spurt of rebellion against God. And he went and struck the rock a second time. All right? So don't think that just because you carry a fish and a Bible and all of that cool stuff of the garb of being called a Christian, that rebellion is not in your heart.
Yeah.
All right? If you were rebellious as a child, when did it get driven out of you? Okay, you have to go back and say, well, it never really did. I still choose to do my own thing. Okay, well, God will deal with that rebellion. He does it in a very loving way now, though. He doesn't have the ground open up and swallow you.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I've got for you this evening. Go with God.
That's good. I think the people who aren't here really